Welcome to 1991 Movie Rewind, the podcast where we watch and review every movie released in 1991, from the all-time greatest classics to the critically panned and everything in between. We'll rediscover forgotten fan favorites and uncover hidden gems as we explore the depths of direct-to-video. Join us in our celebration of the fun, unique, and diverse films of this highly underrated year. This week, we watch Suburban Commando. In Suburban Commando, Hulk Hogan plays an intergalactic vigilante hero named Shep Ramsey. Ramsey has just defeated an evil warlord and has some bounty hunters hot on his trail. In order to lay low and recharge his damaged spaceship, he finds himself on Earth and does the best he can to fit in with these weird humans. Screenplay by Frank A. Cappello, directed by Burt Kennedy, and released on October 4th, 1991. Have you seen Suburban Commando before?
Yeah, I have.
You sound so enthusiastic about it, too.
No, I mean,
It's like, yeah, I have.
I have, but, this is like another movie that got mixed up in my mind with, like, Mr. Nanny.
Yeah.
Like, this movie and that are similar.
Yeah, probably. I don't know if I actually ever did watch Mr. Nanny. But I had the same thought as you. It's like I either saw that one or I saw this one, and I'm pretty sure I've seen this one before.
Okay.
I mean, I've seen the commercials for Mr. Nanny with him like going around the tutu and everything.
Yeah.
But this one, I mean, I thought the kids were a lot more involved in this movie. So I think that's probably what threw me off. Is like the kids...
They're barely in it.
Yeah, they exist, but just to show that there's kids. I don't know. Like they don't factor into the plot at all. So yeah, I'm going to say that I saw this one back when it first reached video. Which is kind of weird because we were not a wrestling family at all. I think you had more of a wrestling...
I mean, not until later. My brother got into wrestling, and then I sort of did, but that was like in the later 90s, early 2000s, so I was not...
It was after this era.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, my cousin was into wrestling, but he didn't live in the same state as us, so, but I mean, like, when we went to his house or whatever, we would play with, like, the action figures and stuff, so I was aware of the wrestlers. I was aware of, like, Andre the Giant and Junkyard Dog and those types of people.
Yeah, I mean, I know these people, and I know that The Undertaker is in this.
Yes, but before he became The Undertaker, which is interesting. So yeah, one of the bounty hunters, we might as well just get in that real quickly here. So Hulk Hogan is the main wrestler. There's two other wrestlers that appear, one visibly on camera, the other one not. But we have, The Undertaker, Mark Calloway. He was cast in this and then became The Undertaker shortly after. Which is weird, but I mean, I guess Vince McMahon had some sort of role in the casting process or something.
Oh,
so like, he knew he was going to be like a WWF stable member. Mark Calloway was with WCW prior to this. He debuted with the WWF in 1990. This released in 1991, late 1991. And so by the time this movie released, he had shown up as Undertaker on television and events and whatnot. And it's possible he even had a WWF title by this time, because I was looking and The Undertaker won his first WWF World title in 1991 by beating Hulk Hogan in the Survivor Series. So I didn't look to see when the Survivor Series aired compared to this movie. But, yeah, long story short, when he was filmed in this, he was not yet Undertaker. But he was basically right around this time. The other wrestler that appears in this movie to some degree is Ed Leslie, who's also known as Brutus the Barber Beefcake. He is a stuntman, so he's not seen, or he's not supposed to be seen facially, but he's rolling around or jumping or something in there. So there are two other wrestlers in there besides Hulk Hogan. Anyway, little tangent, brief pause on the credits before we get into the meat of the story, I guess. This starts very, very slowly. Like, it starts with an action sequence, but it's a very slow action sequence. Like, you have Hulk Hogan who's walking, meandering through the halls, randomly shooting bad guys here and there. It's just like a little tiny jaunt, like, and the sets really, it does not start off well at all, because the sets look worse than what we saw in like Terror Within practically.
Yeah.
A lot of the effects are kind of bad. Like, you see some space laser effects of the ships, and they look worse than Star Wars did in 1977. You know, much, much worse than what we saw, 15 years ago in something like Star Wars. So, I mean, it's not a great introduction to the characters, and Hulk Hogan's performance early on is really, really bad. And all you really hear is these one-liners, like he's on an elevator, he's like going up or going down, just stuff like that. So it's not a great introduction to the character in the story, but it at least lets you know he's supposed to be this badass.
Was he just like protecting whoever his boss is, who was killed by someone by the name Suitor?
General Suitor.
Yeah.
Who has conquered 4 worlds so far. He has this guy named President Hashima.
Yeah, he's on okay. Because I was like, what planet is he supposed to be on?
I don't know.
But
they're
in
space, right?
I know
so they're
that.
not even on a planet.
And I was like, what was his role? Is he just like the bodyguard for that planet?
I think he's basically just, a vigilante, or like a gun for hire type of person.
Okay, so just like Star-Lord or something. I have no idea.
Yeah. But I just think it's really weird that, he's supposed to be this badass, but he can't even, like, run or jog. He has to walk down the halls and, like, shoot.
I think because he has that, like, hardcore armor on, and it's probably, like, hard to run in.
I don't know. That's not very efficient for the type of work he's doing, if that's the case. So it's really weird. But anyway, he gets the job done. He gets Suitor, supposedly. He puts one explosive device every like yard on the corridor. He has like 20 different explosive devices that he just puts on the hall as he's walking to his little escape pod, and he blows up the ship and runs away. But his ship gets damaged to some degree because he's told in the next scene that he needs to recharge for 6 weeks.
Well, like his supervisor is like, his supervisor is like, you seem stressed out. You should take a vacation.
Right, and also because
he failed to save the president of whatever planet that they're on.
Yeah, I don't know. They don't get into that.
I know.
They don't get into a lot of stuff.
I mean, that was just like a 10 to 15 minute scene.
Yeah.
And then he accidentally... Oh, because he gets kind of annoyed that he has to take a vacation, and he slams his hands on the controls of his spaceship, I guess.
And that breaks
it. And that causes it to crash into Earth.
Oh, yeah, okay. And so, but he has to recharge it slowly to avoid, like, giving off... If he charges it too fast, then the signal will... basically act as a beacon to the enemies of the world who are trying to chase him down and kill him. Yeah, the bounty hunter.
Like, it'll send off some sort of sensor that the bounty hunters can find. And so the ship will take
6 weeks to recharge at that pace, and so he has to find a way to live on Earth and sort of adapt and join society for a short period of time.
Yeah.
So while that's happening, or shortly after, we get the opening rap song, if you remember that fun thing, called "It's a Nice Place to Live, But I Wouldn't Want to Visit," by J-Rock and Hulk Hogan. And it was, I think we'll have that on the website for you.
I mean, that and the end credit song.
Oh yeah, the end credit song, which is called Ramsey, which... I don't think Hulk Hogan was actively involved in, but I think they took sound clips, perhaps, of him.
Yeah.
That was done by The Next Big Thing, and it's basically like a B-52s ripoff type of a style thing. But yeah, that opening rap song is
funny.
Yeah, it's funny. It's not. I'm trying to think like.
It's no.
Feel the Impact was like good and funny.
Yeah.
This is just like funny.
Yeah.
And then
it's no Adam's Groove or whatever, the Adams Family.
No, it's not very. Yeah, not very lyrical. I mean, Adam's Groove was nominated for worst song.
Yeah,
right?
That's what I'm saying. This is not.
I think
bad.
I think it's a worse song. It just didn't
really?
have the appeal.
I
At
think,
least, Adam's Groove had some creativity in the lyrics. They're trying to adapt this. This is basically just repeating the same words over and over.
Well, yeah,
again.
I mean
and Hulk Hogan saying, "But I wouldn't want to visit." Like that, that's the appeal of the song. Is Hulk Hogan joining in on the chorus.
The last song is just like people screaming Ramsey every 5 seconds.
Yeah, that was like that movie Deadly Friend that we watched a couple of years ago, or just like BB.
But I don't know, that makes me laugh, and I like it. I don't know, because it makes me laugh.
Yeah, both of them will make you laugh if you're like us.
Yeah, if you like stupid things.
And the other thing that'll make you laugh is when he does crash. I'm sort of jumping up a little bit in the plot. When he is trying to find a place to, live, he sees a flyer for apartment for rent with just an arrow pointing to the right. No price, no contact details, no, here's how many bedrooms or whatever, no address, it's just apartment for rent, arrow.
Yeah.
And he finds the place, no problem.
I mean, does she put apartment for rent at like a little sign in the front of their house to be like, here's the apartment for rent? Yeah, I don't know.
It'd be interesting if
because
they showed
he just
him
walks
following,
up. He walks,
chalk markings on the sidewalk or something.
He walks up a very, it's a rural street with a bunch of houses. How does he know?
Yeah, houses that do not look like apartments, and he's really not renting an apartment. He's renting like a guest house or a shed that they converted to a thing.
I thought it was it's either a shed or did they convert their garage into
one or the other is what it is.
Like a studio apartment.
It was Christopher Lloyd, who I guess we should also mention is in the movie. It's basically Hulk Hogan and Christopher Lloyd, and it's just them as like a buddy comedy. It was his workshop. It was his Doc Brown workshop, basically, where he was like doing all kinds of gadgetry and stuff.
I mean, that's how he blows off steam, I guess, because he is also stressed out from his architect job. Yeah,
he's highly underappreciated. His boss, Larry Miller, who we've seen in Unnecessary Roughness as the shitty dean, now plays a shitty boss. Exact same character, just with more lines, basically.
Yeah, he's playing the same person.
Yeah, and he's good at that.
Yeah.
He's supposed to ask his boss for a raise, and he can't bring up the courage to do it, and all this kind of stuff. And then by the time he gets back, because he's working in that shed in the morning before he goes to work. Mm-hmm. Then his wife puts a wrestling move on him, one of the few wrestling, he puts him in a stranglehold and is saying you're gonna ask your boss for a raise type of a thing. Sort of a love headlock weird thing that they do. It's you are going to have the determination to ask for a raise, and he doesn't. And she takes it upon herself to, that same day, basically knowing that he would chicken out, and converts that shed into an apartment while he's at work.
How did you do that? Because that's like a several week project.
Full on renovations in less than 8 hours.
Yeah, I was how did she do that? And plus, by the time he comes home, she's sexily waiting for him.
Yeah, and then she gets herself all sultry and stuff, which is also a weird thing to see in this movie.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
Shelley Duvall played the wife.
Yeah.
She had 2 scenes practically. But yeah, so she does all this work and then gets into lingerie and stuff to greet him at the door. I think to ease the blow of the fact that his shed is gone.
Yeah, maybe.
So yeah, that's the apartment, quote unquote. that Ramsey is there to rent. That's sort of the backup. There's one other little piece of setup that is worth mentioning just because it is another thing that does not make any sense to me whatsoever, and that's Christopher Lloyd's driving on the highway. It's him and about 12 cars total on this highway stretch with
several lights, yeah.
And they're all stopped at this same stoplight in the same order the 2 or 3 times that they show them going through this routine. And I don't know what the stoplight is there for because it looks like there's no crossway, but they're all just stopped at a stoplight. And then it seems like they're all racing to get to the next stoplight.
I think they're racing to miss, because the next stoplight turns red, like when you get to it. So I think they're kind of racing
to hope to not get caught
to
by
miss
that
second light. That's what I thought they were doing.
It could be, but it's really not super clear. And it seems, like they're all tightly packed, but it's just these grouping of 12 cars and there's absolutely nobody behind them. So it's like really weird just from that optic standpoint.
Right.
And then what makes it really weird is like everyone's like trying to pass Christopher Lloyd's car. He's, basically getting bullied in a sense in the vehicle as well. He's like, treated like the runt of the litter. And people are like fast fiving is what we call it, fast and the furious, like driving all around him and stuff and weaving. And then at some point he just like stops and then goes in reverse.
Like he just
multiple
gave
times.
up.
Like why are you not just like going forward or I don't know. Nothing about that sequence makes sense other than to give him an opportunity to win in the end this weird petty race thing in the last sequence. I don't know. If someone can explain to me, like, why are they going backwards? Why is he going backwards in an empty highway? And I don't think he's reached the light yet. So it's not like he's like halfway through the intersection. He's like, oh, well, now I gotta wait. I don't think that's how it's working, but maybe it is. They don't show it very well. It's very weird. Anyway. Hulk Hogan's there.
Yeah. How does he have money to rent this apartment?
I don't know. Yeah, they don't explain that part at all. He obviously doesn't have credentials of any kind. He doesn't have, a driver's license or references.
Yeah, he's there, and,
he's there he has in, like, his warrior suit.
Right, and
to start, and then
Christopher Lloyd is like, who the hell is this guy?
A dude.
Yeah. And they have dinner with him, and he kind of wins over the kids first, and then he helps out with Jenny, who is Shelley Duvall, and they're like, okay, you can live there, but they don't really show him living there and then I feel like he was, quote, living there for like a week.
I don't know how long it actually ends up being. Things move very fast.
Once he's there, it's like it's always him just like walking around the town. Like you don't really. That was like the only time you really see him inside a house or whatever.
He has that room, right? They showed the apartment that's been converted, and you see him near the bed and like putting his weapon under the bed and stuff like that. But it's very little. It's mostly like Christopher Lloyd's character snooping around the apartment. He's mostly just checking on his ship or going back and forth.
Right. He follows him to where Shep's ship is.
Which is at like an abandoned roller rink or something like that, or maybe a dance club. I think it's a roller rink.
Yeah, I think it's a roller skating rink. They don't
show the inside very well, but there's a scene where he turns the power on and it's like a song, and I think you see like a poster in the background saying it's, roller skating, free skate or something like that.
Yeah.
But that's where his ship is housed. And there's, traceable weapons in there. And that's, a lot of stuff in this movie doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Like when Christopher Lloyd finds the weapon underneath the bed and he decides to shoot it indoors. Like, you see something that clearly looks like a gun. it's like this laser thing that ends up like going through the wall and like burning his neighbor's like
their hot rod car.
Yeah, hot rod car. And it's a gun. Don't shoot it. Don't shoot it indoors. I don't know. It's just weird. Like it's meant to be funny because it's destroying that guy's property, and he doesn't get along with the neighbor with the stock car. And there's several examples of Christopher Lloyd's character getting taken advantage of. The one is that his driveway gets blocked by this guy who's fixing up his dragsters. And then we talked about the highway scene and stuff like that and the boss. And so obviously Hulk is going to help him out with, or Shep Ramsey is going to help him out with like all of that stuff at some point. There's like a hot rod car that goes barreling through the neighborhood every day, I guess, at the same time.
He's fixing like 4 to 5 cars in his driveway and on the streets.
Yeah, and he just blocks the driveway.
Just
mostly as like a joke, I think.
Yeah, I think he just wants to piss off Charlie, I should say.
Oh yeah, Charlie.
Like
Christopher Lloyd. Whatever.
Yeah. But so every time Charlie comes home from work, he just sees the neighbor with all of his friends, I guess, fixing these cars, and all the cars are like in the way of his house and his driveway, and he's like, he'll honk at them, and they're like, whatever, just park over there. But he does. Like, he doesn't, like...
Yeah, he doesn't want the confrontation.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. Especially with someone who's your neighbor you have to see every single day.
Right.
It's complications, those types of things.
Shep just, he starts helping people around. It's like you're seeing him walking around the neighborhood, and he's helping people out.
Yeah, sometimes like at their request, sometimes not.
Yeah.
Right. So I mean, like at one point, the reason he has normal clothes instead of his warrior suit is that he sees a dog in a hot car with the windows rolled up, and this guy's like eating dinner or eating lunch. This bulky dude is eating lunch while the dog's like watching and barking and whatnot, and
in this hot car.
Yeah, helps them change places basically.
Right, and then you see this dog eating spaghetti.
Yeah, sitting at a fancy table.
And the owner is like calling for the dog to help him. I mean, I'm like, that's not gonna happen ever.
No. So I mean, there's funny stuff like that, and then there's also encounters with like the mime, where he's misinterpreting, human nature, and he's like, "Oh, you must be in this force field. Let me get you out." And he like punches the mime on accident.
Right. I mean, that whole thing with the mime makes me laugh. But then I was thinking, like, why is the mime doing his mime stuff like in a back alley?
Yeah, in the middle of the night. Because
he's always in the middle of the night, like in the back of some restaurant or store.
It's some seedy street in Los Angeles somewhere.
And I'm like, wouldn't you want to be, like, if you want to get paid or get some tips, why are you there?
Right.
Doing your miming.
Yeah, like, don't be in a back alley in the middle of the night doing miming. You should be somewhere visible. But it makes for a fun sequence.
I mean, yeah.
And this movie does have quite a lot of fun sequences. It's just, leading up to that, it's a lot of boring build-up and like situational things that are going to play out a certain way, and you're just kind of waiting for them to pay off. And that's what the first quarter to a half of the movie is like, those cars are being blocked in the driveway, and his boss doesn't appreciate him, and this is happening and this is happening, so of course Hulk is going to come through and basically save the day in all these 5-6 different ways. So it's a little annoying getting there because it's so obvious, but once it starts happening and like you get past those sequences and deal with stuff like the mime, that's when it gets more fun. Or like when he goes to the arcade, he just like stumbles into the kid's arcade, and the kid is playing Afterburner, which is not a space game, but he treats it like a space game with dragons and stuff, or Dragos, or I think he says. It's like, you gotta do this thing and this thing, and the kid's
like, I already did, and he's like, well, what about this? And he's like, it's too hard, I don't know, and then he just takes over and wins the game.
Yeah, The kids are like, yeah, you did it. You won the game. He's like, what game?
Yeah. Like, he thought it was a real thing. A real interstellar fight.
So there's a lot of silly fun like that, and that's where this movie really starts to shine. Or like when they come across like the skateboarding kids, and he trips and falls over the skateboard, and so he flings it into space because he's frustrated with it.
And then the funny thing is when they do show the bounty hunters looking for him, you see the skateboard flying, spinning around in space. Yeah. So
it's a nice little callback.
Yeah.
But there's also like silly stuff that doesn't work quite as well, because there is so Christopher Lloyd finds some of the weapons and stuff, and he saves this one from being attacked or mugged nearby by using Ramsey's suit and weaponry, and the two thugs end up using this like freeze ray gun to start robbing a bank at some point. And so they get into the bank, and like everyone's in there frozen, all the customers and the guards, which is, a good gag and whatnot. But then like the music kind of ruins it because it goes over the top and starts playing like jingle bells and things like that in the bank.
Yeah,
little obnoxious.
Because it's wintry in there.
Yeah, because everyone's frozen.
I know.
It's like Christmas time inside the bank.
One of my favorite things is like a lady holding a dog, and you can tell that it's just like a stuffed animal, obviously,
because they have to like hold completely still. And
I know.
Naturally, so she just has two very obviously frosted stuffed dogs in her hands. So that's like a sequence where Ramsey becomes the hero again, but that's when the bounty hunters finally show up, because this weapon has been basically created a beacon to help the bounty hunters. One of which is Undertaker guy. Find him, and that's when the big brawls start to happen, potentially. Meanwhile, there's like this subplot with, again, the job and the boss, Larry Miller, who's trying to court these Japanese businessmen. Once again, in 1991, here we are with Japanese businessmen.
This is like maybe the third movie that I can think of that we've seen where it's like someone trying to court Japanese businessmen.
Yes.
For something.
Yes. And somewhat making fun of their culture in the process.
Yes.
I don't think it was too terrible. I think in this one it was more
showing
the ignorance of the American, which was fine.
Them saying something in Japanese and then the interpreter having... because the Japanese boss, or the guy that he's mostly talking to, is like, I hate this guy or whatever. And he says in Japanese, like, I don't really like this guy. But then the interpreter has to say, oh, he's very pleased to meet you. And then the Japanese guy says in Japanese, like, you coward. Why didn't you just say...
Just tell him the truth.
Just tell him what I really said.
Yeah. So, it's really interesting to see the themes and the threads and stuff that may not happen in current movies that were happening in 1991, like the trope of the Japanese businessman. And so Charlie, Christopher Lloyd's character, is supposed to be providing the boss with some sort of like blueprints for this building that they're gonna do. And he's like trying to hold them over or whatever. There's like this big party, and they both, Shep and Charlie, sort of crash it, and
because
then the goons come and crash it too, and so there's like a big old struggle in the building and whatnot.
Because I guess his ship requires like some rare crystals, and the closest samples to that are found in Larry Miller's character's office.
Yeah, so the boss has a bunch of awards that are made out of simian crystal, which I didn't look up to see if that's a real thing.
Like all of his awards he's won for like architecture, like Art Vandelay, whatever architecture stuff. I have no idea.
But yeah, at some point he's like, well, if you know how I can find X number of pounds of simian crystals, and he's like, I do actually, and so they go, and it becomes a big weird thing. But it's a decent fight sequence, I guess. or decent enough. It's no Die Hard in terms of office building fights.
Yeah, it was like a very...
But it's better than the original fight scenes from the beginning of the movie. Fewer laser shots, but, you know, still decent.
Simian crystals do exist.
Okay. Well, that's what the awards are made out of, and that's what is meant to power his ship to a point where he can get out of there. And then we get to... Okay, the other thing we didn't really mention is that the bounty hunters don't talk at all. And then, except for one line, and I forget what he says, but his voice is like a little kid. Like, like very, very Helium-like.
Yeah.
So that was a nice little twist. I mean, they throw these weird little twists at you every once in a while that catch you off guard in such a way. It's like, oh, that's charming. That's a fun little joke or gag. But yeah, they get the crystals or whatever, and they go back to the roller rink, and turns out the General Suitor is not dead after all.
Right.
He found his way,
and he turns into like this creature from the Black Lagoon type thing.
Yeah, like a predator lizard looking thing. It's kind of creepy in a way.
Yeah.
It's like surprisingly grotesque for a kid's movie.
I mean, that was scarier than like the Terror Within monsters.
Yeah.
So like whatever budget they used just for that one guy.
Yeah. And then they use the same technique as Terror Within in that he gets electrocuted.
Yeah. Or
Double Impact if we want to go back to Double Impact. You know, the same type of thing. And there's a nut grab in this, sort of like, you know, the nut punch and Double Impact.
Yeah.
So. But yeah, surprisingly, with all the wrestlers and even, you know, having Mark Calloway in there as well, there aren't a whole, and with Hulk Hogan being the lead and known for wrestling, there aren't a whole lot of wrestling moves that are done throughout this movie. It's not about that. It's just, or even, there aren't a whole lot of wrestling references either. At one point he says, what is this, a tag team? When there's two bounty hunters that like are, one of them falls down the elevator and then the other one comes up from the elevator in like, you know, it's a quick succession just by happenstance, and he's like, what is this, a tag team? But yeah, it's not, the references are not overt and they're not constantly beating you over the head, which is much appreciated, really. But I do wish the action was a little bit more, I don't know, special
more
effecty.
actiony.
Yeah,
I don't know. There's
actiony. It, you know, had a little bit more polish to it, better choreography, because there's not much that's happening except for, you know, easily dodgeable punches here and there. I mean, this is by and large a kid's movie. I think you know, this is basically what you would see on something like the Disney Channel if they were making original movies at this time.
I don't know. This might be a little too much for Disney. I have no idea.
I mean, it gives that vibe like off to me just because it
Disney movie.
Just because the sets look so bad and some of the action is very hampered and the jokes are sort of silly and wacky and stuff. I think what means, you know, the reason it would not be a Disney movie is one, probably the monster, the predator lizard.
Yeah.
Again. And two, the kids, again, they appear for like a couple gags and that's about it. Like the kids that have, you know, the skateboard kid has more lines than the actual children of Shelley Duvall and Christopher Lloyd.
Yeah, I mean, those kids, I don't even remember them doing anything besides in the beginning of the movie.
Being held up.
Being held up. Kind of like the same in Mr. Nanny. Doesn't he hold the kids up the same way? Kind of like just by like one arm and one leg type of thing? And they're, I don't know.
It could be.
But, and then just them having that dinner with him, and then that was it. You don't see the kids after that dinner scene. So that very first scene where they meet him, you don't
you see them at the end, they're saying goodbye.
Oh, okay.
But I mean,
but you don't see him interact with them after that dinner, I guess.
Yeah, it's not like, I don't know,
like
let's
him,
say like What About Bob?
Yeah,
where
kids
he's
are
like central to interacting with the
kids
main
are not
character.
befriending him, or he's not, befriending them or whatever. He's more like friendly to like the neighborhood kids, like the skateboard kids, or like that girl who lost her cat in the tree.
Right.
Like he's interacting with neighborhood kids more than the kids that's like in the house that he's like living with, I guess.
Yeah, and that's kind of weird. You think that, maybe he would be helping with any sort of bullying that the kids are going through, or if there's like a boyfriend who's being mean to the girl or something.
Like he's helping more with that family since he's staying with that family.
Yeah, but he's really not.
He's mostly just helping Charlie.
Just helping Charlie, and then just walking back and forth between the house and his ship to check on his ship.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of like interacting with the mine here and there.
Yeah, it's kind of like a boring thing if you think about it. It's like him walking back and forth to his ship, checking on it, and then sort of helping neighborhood kids.
Just in like whatever shenanigans will happen along the way.
Yeah.
Is what happens. So it's weird. But I don't know, it does sort of give off like an early Disney movie vibe to me, just because of that type of a thing, and also the what looks like a low budget, but you said like the budget was like $11 million is what you looked up, which is insane to me. It did not make that much back. It was a flop. Made about 7-ish in the box office all told. Yeah, so but I mean, it has like a cult, it's known, people know what this movie is more than some of the 100+ other movies released in 1991 that performed better in the box office. So, anyway, everything works out in the end, and somehow he has a new ship, because his ship gets destroyed in the fight with Suter.
Does he need more crystals to make them?
Well, yeah, that's the unfortunate part, I guess, is like the crystals ended up being worthless because his ship got destroyed.
Yeah, I was like, how
did blew up. And then all of a sudden he has a new ship, so they sort of gloss over and they don't show him contacting anybody to like get his transport back home.
Right.
But now he has it on the roof of this random building, which I don't know if that's supposed to be the architect building that he worked at or what. Idea. But... And then he leaves with the secretary.
Yep.
Who we didn't talk about at all. Who's, a decent character. She's like, sort of like a tough, commandeering, overly protective of the boss, weirdly.
Sort of thing. But she's also kind of like encouraging Charlie.
Yeah. She's like on everybody's side.
Yeah.
Except for when they try to steal the crystals, then she points a gun at them, which is weird.
She's like, she's like kind of just protecting her boss's office. Yeah. Like, what are you going to do in there? Type of thing.
It's an odd character, but an interesting one. Played by Joanne Deering, who's mostly... She was a stand-up comedian. She was in one episode of Step by Step.
Okay.
So, and then that's about it. I don't know.
At the very, very end, Charlie still has one of Shep's guns because he goes back to that annoying highway and he shoots the traffic lights and everyone in those cars cheer.
Right.
That's the very, very end.
And like he's able to, and his car is all beat up from all of the action throughout the movie. And,
right. It's missing a door. And he's still driving around and
replaces it. And like at one point he has to give it to a valet, and the valet does not care at all.
Yeah, he's just like, oh, okay. He doesn't react to the door being missing at all. He's just like, oh, okay, and starts the car and drives off.
Yeah. There's just like a lot of weird little things that sort of add up to making it a much more fun movie than it probably has a right to be.
Yeah.
I don't know. But there's a lot of stuff that just does not make sense, and it's not in necessarily a fun way. Like the car stuff and the highway stuff, it just doesn't make sense. But then you have, his other neighbor on the other side. You have the hot rod builders, and then on the other side you have this World War II colonel,
right,
who's on an abandoned Jeep with no wheels on the front lawn drinking and like giving him sass.
Like giving him shit like every day.
Who's played... I don't know if that's just a reason to get Jack Elam on the movie, because Jack Elam plays Colonel Dusty McHowell, and there's like two scenes with him, basically.
Pretty much.
But he's a well-known...
it's just showing, like, I don't know if it's just like a jab to like suburban living where you have like really eccentric neighbors.
Yeah, I think that's part of it.
Living
is like,
on top of you.
And if you look at it from Hulk Hogan's perspective, it's like this world is just full of crazy people. This is like the weirdest assortment of characters.
Yeah.
That's what Earth is. And he's getting, he's getting the assortment. He's getting like the variety chocolate box here.
Yeah.
I think that might be part of what they're going for. And it works sometimes and it works not so well other times. But I think it works more than it doesn't at the end of the day. I was surprised at how much I liked this.
I mean, I was laughing. Yeah. And I was not bored.
Yeah, I mean, like, the mime stuff happened multiple times and it was
and
still,
it was making me laugh each time.
The talking car alarm thing, pleading for its life was cool. The arcade scene was good. It's surprising that this worked the way it did. I don't know if we have much else to say here on the plot, but that's the long and short of Suburban Commando, is that it's really stupid, goofy fun.
Yeah.
So why don't we go ahead and we can talk really quickly about some of the cast and cameos that we haven't mentioned yet. I think it's probably not worth mentioning Christopher Lloyd too much. We already know who he is. I would hope most people know who he is. And we're going to see him again in the Addams Family. But at this point, he's won a couple Emmys for Taxi and Road to Avonlea. Hulk Hogan, before this, he had been in some movies. Gremlins 2, he had a cameo, which is probably where that was my previous film knowledge. Rocky 3, No Holds Barred. And then later he would do Mr. Nanny, Thunder in Paradise, and Three Ninjas, High Noon at Mega Mountain. Burt Kennedy was the director of this one. This was his last feature. He had done stuff like The Trouble with Spies, Simon and Simon, the TV show, Support Your Local Sheriff, which also had Jack Elam, The Train Robbers and The Rounders, and he also wrote a couple movies like The Rounders and several other westerns. Frank A. Cappello, this was his debut in terms of writing. He went on to do things like No Way Back and also Constantine, that Keanu Reeves DC comic adaptation movie from like 2005. Shelley Duvall was barely in this movie, really. I mean, she had a couple scenes here and there, but she didn't have much purpose. I don't know, other than to be the person who rents out the apartment.
Yeah.
I guess. There was no major conflict that Hulk had to resolve for her.
Right.
So, she was very self-sufficient. She's an Emmy nominee for her Tall Tale and Legends children's series, as well as Shelley Duvall's bedtime stories. She's probably most known for The Shining, which she actually got a Razzie nomination for. I was surprised to see that. And also she works with Robert Altman.
After being like mentally and like almost physically abused.
Yeah.
For doing it.
Yeah, that's her reward for going through that torment on set by Stanley Kubrick, is to have a Razzie nomination. When I don't think her performance was bad at all in that movie. But she had a BAFTA nomination and a Cannes Award win for her role in Three Women. She's been in other Altman movies like Brewster McCloud, McCabe and Mrs. Miller in Nashville, and Popeye, of course, as well. People forget that's an Altman movie, but it is. William Ball, who played General Suter, which is a weird choice for a bad guy, because he's an older guy. It's like, we haven't gotten to Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey yet, but it's the same type of vibe that I get from the bad guy in Bogus Journey, where it's like an older dude with like an overcoat, and that equals villain. But that's what we get from William Ball. He died in July of 1991, so this was basically his last movie role. I think there was one that released after this. He was mostly known as a Broadway director. He's nominated for Tonys for that. He founded the American Conservatory Theater in San Francisco, and this is only one of 4 acting credits on IMDb for him.
Wow.
The first since 1973. So why he came back to act in this
why
specifically?
Do this?
I mean, maybe he was really good friends with Burt Kennedy or something like that, the director. That's the only thing I can think of. It's a very weird choice. I already talked about Jack Elam. Look him up if you don't know who he is. He's very, very famous face, really. Like his bulging eyes and his left one doesn't move, and so he gets, you know, sort of like a Peter Lorre type of a vibe. He plays a lot of villains and crazy characters and westerns and stuff like that. And then otherwise, I mean, I think the biggest person to mention that we haven't so far is that little girl with her cat stuck in the tree that Hulk Hogan tries to save here and there. Was played by Elizabeth Moss in one of her early roles. Not her first, I don't think, but one of her early ones. She's an Emmy nominee and winner for The Handmaid's Tale. Nominated for Mad Men and Top of the Lake. She was also in the movie Us. She's been in The West Wing. And probably the most recent notable one is the Invisible Man movie. I also will briefly mention that skateboard kid, Malachi Pearson is his name. He was the voice of Casper in 1995 through 1998. So, like, you know, the Christina Ricci Casper movie and all the subsequent, like, animated stuff that happened with that character.
So Devon Sawa didn't do his own Casper voice? This
says that he was Casper.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't he do his own Casper voice?
I don't know.
Right.
Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong.
No,
if you do have a correction, we'll say it on the website and we'll say it probably next episode and everything.
I'm just, like, wondering why. Because, like, maybe his Malachi's voice was, like, more childlike.
It could be.
I haven't seen that movie since I was, like, a teen. So I really don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I do have some information on the two kids who were, you know, like the two kids of Shelley Duvall and Christopher Lloyd. But they didn't have a whole lot of roles. Like Laura Mooney, who played Teresa, was Kelly's sister on an episode of Saved by the Bell, where she had a big crush on Zach. She was also in the Potato Head Kids. Michael Faustino played Mark. He was...
is he related to David?
He is the brother of David Faustino. He's been on a couple episodes of Married with Children, and he was also in Blank Check as the brother of the guy who, you know, the little kid who got the blank check.
Okay.
So... Again, no major roles from either of them. So that's what we got for cast and crew. I will say that there were no awards to speak of with this. Can't say that's too surprising, though. Not even an MTV Movie Award for Hulk Hogan, who...
No, he's not in any, like, montages or anything like that. Not like how they had... the
like
pig
best
from
pig or something.
Yeah.
Best animals, like the dog eating the spaghetti or whatever it was. No, nothing like that, unfortunately.
I mean, I don't know if you want to talk about... We watched this on DVD.
Oh, yeah, we did. So, yeah, normally we try to do coming attractions if there's any sort of trailers and whatnot. There were not.
But there was a game.
There was the trailer for the movie, but no other movies to speak of that we, you know, no coming attractions. But there was a game on the DVD called...
Like Pick the Flick or something like that?
I think it's called Pick the Flick.
And it's kind of like a Seen It type game, or like a You Don't Know Jack, where it's just they show a scene of a
You have like
movie.
10 different choices of New Line released movies.
Yeah, 10 different random New Line movies.
And then they show you a still from a movie and you have to pick which movie it's from.
Yeah, and we got 8 out of 10, but then we get this like serious face.
Yeah, we got this like
wah wah face, and it's like, you did 8 out of 10.
It's like, that's okay, I guess. Yeah. But one of the ones we got wrong, because we did the game before we saw the movie, Suburban Commando was one that we guessed wrong, and we thought it was Mr. Nanny.
Well, because I was
it was like the kids with the skateboards lined up.
Well, I thought it was
like,
three ninjas.
Well, that's a bunch of kids. That was probably I think we inputted Mr. Nanny. But either way, we were both wrong.
I know, but then I was thinking, oh, maybe it was like after we were done with that, I was like, oh, it must have been Suburban Commando. But there was like some of the choices was it was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 1, 2, and 3, yeah. And then each still was just like. It's just a group of the turtles together, and we kind of had to guess, like, based off of, like, how great their costumes were or whatever.
Like, oh, that looks like it might be ancient Japan. So that's probably 3. This one, the costumes look a little bit better in this one, so it's probably 2.
And we got it right.
like, oh, but he's holding a ceiling fan, which might have been from the apartment fight in the first one. Yeah. And some of the scenes repeated. So, yeah, I think it's like just a random selection of images, and then you have to pick which ones. But it was an interesting experience. It's fun. I miss those types of things. You don't get that type of stuff with streaming.
Yeah.
Other pop culture we can talk about in regards to this movie is that it does have a video game as well.
Oh, yeah.
So it's the second one in a row now. So we got American Tail, which had the SNES, and then this one had a computer game. So it was like on Amiga computers. So it wasn't on home consoles at all, but there was some sort of an action platformer where you play like this cartoony looking Hulk Hogan guy. The best comparison I can give you is if you ever watch Clarissa Explains It All, the computer games that she made with like Ferguson, with like the big head and the little body, that's what Hulk Hogan looks like in this basically. We'll have a video of it up on the website. And you run around, and they basically try to adapt the movie to some degree. He starts out on the ship, and then he goes to the real world, and then he has the big old fight against the lizard suitor at the end. So
I mean, when it comes to TV and music, a lot of it's the same because this is maybe 2 to 3 weeks before Salmon Berries, but I could do the top 5 songs for the week so this movie was released October 4th, 1991. So the week of October 5th, 1991, the top 5 songs. The first one is Good Vibrations by Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch. Number 2 is I Adore Me More by Color Me Bad. Number 3 is Emotions by Mariah Carey. Number 4 is Do Anything, Natural Selection. And then number 5 is Love of a Lifetime, Firehouse, which a lot of these are repeats.
Yeah, I don't remember if we've talked about Firehouse, though, so that's probably a new one,
new
one to be mentioned.
Yeah, that could be new, because it's been on the charts it came on the charts like 15 weeks, and it's been at like number 5 for the past 15 weeks.
Okay, but we haven't always done top 5 for some of these episodes, and we jump around timeline a lot. So, and then
just looking at I was looking at other stuff on this list, like is there any new releases or anything like that?
Is Whitney Houston somewhere on this list?
I mean, I know that Whitney Houston is not going to be on this.
Star Spangled Banner Watch is.
It's not in October.
Not happening in October.
But I saw this song, and I didn't even know that this was a song until like in 5 to 10 minutes before we recorded. But number 91, this is new on the charts, is Crash Test Dummies' Superman song. And I saw that and I was like, I didn't know Crash Test Dummies was around in 1991, because, I mean, the only song I know is their one hit.
Yeah, the
Yeah, and that's from
1992.
It was 93.
Oh, 93, okay.
And that's like the only song that they've had that has been on the charts that I know of.
Was that Superman song also on that same album that in 1993?
No.
They didn't
this is no, because then I looked up this song. I'm like, what? Because I was listening to it. I'm like, these lyrics are awful. But I mean, if you listen to the lyrics of like the song, I mean, that's kind of dumb too.
Yeah. That's a song that's kind of so obnoxious you can't even listen to the Weird Al parody because it just reminds you too much of it.
Yeah, but then I looked up this song, and then I didn't know this band was from Canada. I didn't know they were
I did know that.
Oh, okay, I didn't know that. And I guess this song, the Superman song, became a 1991 hit first in Canada and somehow became a hit here in the U.S. I've never heard of this song until, like, honestly, a couple hours ago. And then it was on their first album. Their first album was in 1991. So it's not on the same album as the other song.
I guess maybe I'm probably getting confused with like Spin Doctors, who also did like Superman related songs.
Yeah.
Which, wasn't necessarily 1991, but
Yeah,
I thought I remembered seeing Superman on, because I did have that Crash Dummies tape. I'm sure just like everybody in the world somehow acquired it at some point. Right?
I did not, because
I don't know if I bought it, but it
did not care.
It was in my possession at some point, so and I thought I've
never heard any
Superman.
other song of theirs.
I don't know if I ever have listened to that tape. I might have.
But
maybe it was like one of those Columbia House 10 for a penny things. I'm like, all right,
I would have been like, I'll use it as like.
I'll see if any of their other songs are good, and
no,
they are not. Right?
Yeah, I would listen just out of like curiosity, but then that would just be thrown in the trash or something.
Like, okay, 10 seconds.
Or you just like resell it at Disc Replay and you get your penny back. I don't know.
It's like 9 free CDs at this point.
Right.
Or cassette tapes for me.
So yeah, that was the music wise, and
we'll
then,
have that on the website too.
Yeah.
So if you want to hear how much of a great gent Clark Kent was,
yes,
then we'll link to it.
Right, and then TV wise, there was nothing really new. It was a typical TGIF lineup. So I looked up, what was on SNL. So there was an episode, October 5th, 1991. It was hosted by Jeff Daniels, and the musical guests, which we did not see, unfortunately, was Color Me Bad. Which
Peacock never has those.
Which, I mean, I don't think they cut any of the skits because it was a full hour.
Yeah, I don't think they... this is probably the most complete one that we've seen. It just didn't have... Maybe they cut a little bit out of Weekend Update, but if they did, I didn't notice it. And yeah, they didn't have the musical guests performance.
Which, I mean, that sucks because, Color Me Bad, to me, I still like them.
Okay.
And then I went on a tiny rabbit hole, and I kind of want to do like a behind the music.
You could do a bonus episode on Color Me Bad?
I don't know.
All right.
I just went, maybe, I don't know, because then I saw like an episode of, they were on a Dr. Phil episode together. I was like, oh, this is good. I don't know.
You should do a bonus episode, Color Me Surprised, with the story of Color Me Bad.
Maybe, I don't know, like where, I like Where Are They Now stuff. That's why I was like, I want to behind the music of Color Me Bad. I know they have not done this, but I know that Behind the Music is like renewed.
Yeah, it's back on Paramount Plus.
Which I'm curious.
We haven't watched
like
any.
what? Because I think that's
those were
like my calling is just finding out about bands that were good 30 years ago, and then finding out where they are now. But this episode was the first appearance of the Chris Farley show, so we watched the first one.
And the entire episode was
good,
really surprisingly good.
Yeah. And I feel like I've seen this when I was young because I remember a lot of these skits.
It was weird that Jeff Daniels was there as the host because what was he promoting?
It was for The Butcher's Wife.
Was he really promoting The Butcher's Wife?
Because that's what he mentioned in the Chris Farley show.
But was that the reason he was there? It just seems weird to me that would be the reason.
Yeah, The Butcher's Wife was released like 2 weeks after this, so I'm assuming it's The Butcher's Wife, which is weird. I don't know.
Yeah.
But, I was thinking like, is this the reason why he got like Dumb and Dumber? Because he's like really good at comedy, and he's only done like serious movies.
It's possible
prior to Dumb and Dumber.
And there's that one sketch where he does like the fake, where he's in the novelty gag factory, and he does like the Dumb and Dumber laugh.
Right, where he's like slapping his knee and kind of wheezing.
Yeah,
and I was like, that's a Dumb and Dumber thing.
That's what I forget his character. Is he Lloyd or is he the other one?
Lloyd, I think.
Yeah, like that's a Lloyd laugh if he's Lloyd. If he's not Lloyd, then he's... But anyway, like the whole episode is pretty solid, and I think part of the reason why I didn't know why
he did like a good Jay Leno, too.
Oh yeah, he did a really solid Jay Leno impression at the beginning where, it's like Johnny Carson's farewell, And then the monologue is
he's
just him
Harry.
doing...
He's Harry, not
He's
Lloyd.
Harry? Okay.
Yeah.
I figured Lloyd was wrong.
I'm picturing him saying Lloyd.
Yeah. But yeah, his monologue wasn't him talking about, hey, I got this new movie coming out or anything. It's like him coming out and then immediately running down the hall and being trained by Dana Carvey of how to do the monologue of like the different steps of like point at people, do the seal clap, and
pull the fridge, falling star,
do your
point.
pigeon neck to the band to show your with them,
yeah.
and all that kind of stuff. And like I don't know, that's like one of the most memorable monologues to me personally is that, but he doesn't get a chance to say why he's there.
Yeah.
But yeah, you have a Rich Meister sketch in there too. You have a Simon who likes to do drawings sketch in there. And I also remember as a kid that prank thing scared me because at the end Phil Hartman gets replaced by that skeleton when the cigar explodes. And so cutting back to seeing like a skeleton head was that's freaky to my paranoid self. But yeah, the Chris Farley sketch is still, even though you know exactly how those sketches
they're still hilarious,
are still really funny.
Yeah.
Anyway, check out that episode
on Peacock. Season 17, episode 2.
The one right after Michael Jordan hosted, which maybe we'll cover at some point because
that's
just need an accompanying movie.
Yep.
Is that it for pop culture then?
Yep.
Okay. So we'll go on to rankings and ratings. On your 1 to 5 star scale, where would you put Suburban Commando?
I'm going to give this a 2.
So you get about somewhat middle of the road-ish.
I don't hate it.
Yeah. No, neither did I.
I was laughing more to this than... I enjoyed this more than, like, An American Tail, to be honest.
I did, too. I really did. Yeah, I was...
I was not bored. I was laughing.
I was expecting to kind of hate it. And then, like, when the opening sequence stuff happened, I'm like, oh, God, this is super cheesy. This is, like, Terror Within level of production. And maybe that was intentional. I don't know. But it won me over as time went on. Like, all the little gags and, like, the stupid little stuff that happens throughout this movie. Yeah, I'm giving it a 2 out of my 0 4-star scale, too. So, like, it's a straight middle-of-the-road thing. Because, yeah, it's not produced well.
Yeah.
But it's, like, super entertaining and still, like, funny and charming in so many different ways. It's so weird. So there we are. Every movie's worth watching once. Would you watch this again?
Yeah.
I would, too. I'm surprised I'm saying that. But yeah, I would too. I don't know. I'm also curious about Mr. Nanny to see how that goes.
Yeah, and compare.
Yeah, and figure out, did I watch that as a kid as well? And see if anything jogs the memory. But if you out there want to watch Suburban Commando as of this recording in November 2021, it's available as a digital rental, VHS, or DVD with that fun game. As always, check your local listings. As for us, you can listen to us on all your major podcasting platforms. Please remember to rate, review, subscribe, and tell your friends. It really does help us out a lot. You can email us on 1991movierewind@gmail.com. Of course, you can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and Letterboxd. Just search 1991 Movie Rewind or go to 1991movierewind.com for the full list of movies along with show notes and more. Next week, we're closing out our family month, and we're going to watch All I Want for Christmas. It's available as a digital rental on VHS or DVD. We'll see you then.
Thanks.